Islamabad, the International Monetary Fund (IMF) has projected significant fiscal slippages and has finally cut the tax collection target to 5.238 trillion rupees, which raises questions over claims of bringing fiscal discipline and restoring macroeconomic stability. The IMF expects Pakistan to miss the budget deficit target of 3.2 trillion rupees and has projected excesses in almost all types of current expenditures including debt servicing and defense, showed a report that the global lender released on Monday. As a result of the first review of the $6 billion loan program implementation, the IMF has introduced some major changes in the program conditions. It has modified nearly a dozen existing conditions, including relaxing the social sector spending conditions and introducing 4 more conditions. However, the changes that the IMF has made in the fiscal framework suggest that the country is far from achieving fiscal discipline and austerity, as expenditures are going to be far higher than the budget and FBR's revenue target has been cut. These changes also deny a claim to the IMF on protecting social sector and human development spending. Pakistan's budget deficit will slip from the projected 7.3% of GDP or 3.2 trillion rupees to 3.4 trillion rupees or 7.6% of GDP, according to the IMF. But the IMF has kept the primary budget deficit, being calculated after excluding interest payments, unchanged at 0.6% of GDP or 257 billion rupees. As against the budgetary target of 5.503 trillion rupees, the IMF has now cut the FBR's tax collection target to 5.238 trillion rupees, a reduction of 265 billion rupees. The FBR faced 211 billion shortfall in first 5 months of the current fiscal year, and even the 5.238 trillion rupees target appears unrealistic. IMF mission chief to Pakistan Ernesto Rigo had denied during a press conference in November that the FBR's target would be reduced. The fiscal year 2019-20 general government primary deficit target is achievable, but the composition of revenue has changed, said the IMF. Tax revenue is now expected to be 0.5% of GDP, lower than originally expected. On the other hand, non-tax revenue is expected to be 0.8% of GDP, higher than originally expected. In order to offset the FBR target revision implications, the IMF has projected the non-tax revenue to increase from 710 billion rupees to 1.1 trillion rupees in the current fiscal year. Overall, the federal revenues have been shown declining from 5.8 trillion rupees to 5.5 trillion rupees in this fiscal year. The fiscal slippages are mainly in the federal current expenditures that have now been projected to increase from 6.26 trillion rupees to 6.5 trillion rupees, a rise of 217 billion rupees, according to the IMF. As against earlier estimates of 2.98 trillion rupees, the IMF has now estimated interest payments at 3.12 trillion rupees, an increase of 147 billion rupees within a span of 3 months. Defense spending has been projected at 1.34 trillion rupees as against earlier estimates of 1.3 trillion rupees. But the federal government has shown only 1.15 trillion rupees in defense spending in the budget. Owing to earlier underestimation of the public debt and fiscal slippages, the IMF has now projected the total public debt and liabilities will increase to 37.6 trillion rupees or 84.7% of GDP by the end of this fiscal year. It has also projected that the external public and publicly guaranteed debt as a percentage of total exports will increase from the earlier projection of 234% to 246%. Complacent IMF? Pakistan missed the 5 indicative program targets set for the first quarter, July to September, all of which were critical. The BISP cash transfer target of 45 billion rupees was missed and only 5 billion rupees was given to the BISP, showed the report. The IMF said BISP spending was expected to be corrected by the end of December. The indicative target for net accumulation of tax refund arrears of 75 billion rupees was missed. The power sector arrears target of 23 billion rupees was also missed, and the actual increase in the power sector circular debt remained at 77 billion rupees in the first quarter, according to the IMF. The IMF said spending on health and education fell short of the target of 349 billion rupees and remained at 257.2 billion rupees, lower by 92 billion rupees. Not only that, the IMF has allowed all the governments to spend only 570 billion rupees on health and education in the July to December period as against the original target of 698.4 billion rupees. The IMF relaxed the health and education spending condition by 128.6 billion rupees or 18.4%. New conditions. The IMF said Pakistan was moving forward with the public finance management reforms that would help achieve budgetary discipline, improve transparency and build confidence in the spending of budgetary resources. It has introduced a condition that the Finance Ministry will present a mid-year budget review report by the end of February 2020 to Parliament to provide budget and actual comparisons of revenue, expenditure and financing for H1 FY20 as well as revised estimates for the budget year. The IMF has also imposed a continuous condition of not giving preferential tax treatment to any sector or entity aimed at stopping the government from creating more distortions. The SBP Act amendment condition has been relaxed for December to March 2020. The IMF has modified the conditions related to government guarantees to accommodate the issuance of guarantees in the power sector, net international reserves and net domestic assets of the SBP to lock in some of the overperformance achieved by the end of September and general government primary budget deficit. Please subscribe our YouTube channel Listen News here. If you like the video, please like, comment and share the video.